Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. An Israeli government spokesperson has said that after hostage releases, the Israeli military will control about 53% of Gaza following the signing of the final draft of the Gaza Peace Plan Phase 1 deal in Egypt by all parties, according to media reports. She further stated that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump held an emotional call, praising each other for the historic achievement. Israel's far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich has announced that his religious Zionism party will vote against the Gaza ceasefire deal. Smotrich has urged the government to resume fighting after hostages are freed, rejecting any move towards Palestinian statehood or an international security force in Gaza. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian strikes may have cut Russian gasoline supplies by up to 1/5. He further stated that Russian forces carried out 1,550 strikes on energy targets in Ukraine over the past month, while the US and Russia have no shared perspective on the war, according to him. The U.S. governor shutdown enters its second week, while court hearings in Illinois and California will review President Donald Trump's National Guard deployments to Chicago and Portland as governors and a coalition of 24 states challenge defederalization. French President Emmanuel Macron is seeking his sixth prime minister within the next 36 hours now. This follows after outgoing Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned on Monday amid France's worst political crisis in modern history. Pope Leo has criticized trickle-down economic policies and urged Catholics to support immigrants in his first major document. He further warned that the global market system leaves too many in poverty and signals continuity with late Pope Francis, who began the document before his death in April. An artillery strike by Sudan's rapid support forces has killed 13 people and wounded 20 others inside a mosque in the besieged city of El Fasher, according to eyewitnesses quoted by media reports. Survivors have said that the mosque had sheltered about 70 families when shells hit on Wednesday, destroying part of the building as well. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi urged Rwandan leader Paul Kagame to make peace and hold support for insurgents in eastern DRC during a Brussels Global Gateway Forum. Tshisekedi called on Kagame to order the M23 troops to stop escalation that has already caused numerous deaths. Now we start with the Middle East. Israel's government spokesperson has confirmed that the first phase of Gaza ceasefire agreement has been finalized in Egypt. She has said that the plan was signed earlier this morning, laying out the steps for the release of hostages and the initial withdrawal of troops. The spokesperson has added that a ceasefire is expected to take effect within 24 hours of today's Israeli cabinet meeting. According to the official, Israeli military will retain control over roughly 53% of Gaza during the transition period. She has also confirmed that Palestinian leader Marwan Barghouti will not be included in the upcoming prisoner release. Barghouti is thought to be a possible challenger to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's control of Ramallah. Israel's government spokesperson has confirmed that the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement has been finalized in Egypt. She has said that the plan was signed earlier this morning, laying out the steps for the release of hostages and the initial withdrawal of Israeli troops. The spokeswoman has added that a ceasefire is expected to take effect within 24 hours of today's Israeli cabinet meeting. According to the official, Israeli military will retain control over roughly 53% of Gaza during the transition period. She has also confirmed that Palestinian leader Marwan Barghouti will not be included in the upcoming prisoner release. Barghouti is thought to be a possible challenger to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's control of Ramallah. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by John Rossomando. He's the president of Viking Research Associates, joins us live from US. Thank you very much, John, for joining us again. Good to see you. John, with the first phase of Gaza ceasefire agreement now finalized, how do you assess the potential for this agreement to hold?
Well, I think it'll hold at least, hopefully in the beginning. But I think the thing that we have to, be aware of is that, Hamas believes in something called a hudna, which is a temporary truce. It would never agree to a permanent peace with Israel. I mean, it's in Hamas's charter. So I'm, very cautiously optimistic. But also when you have people in Gaza running around saying Khaybar, Yaya Hud, which is their war cry against the Jews, it doesn't make me feel good.
And now Israeli military has said that they will be retaining control over half of Gaza during this transition period. Do you know anything about how long will this transition period, or how long could this transition period last, and how many percentage are they retaining?
Well, I think that, all of this is kind of very open-ended. I mean, it depends upon how Hamas honors its end of the bargain in terms of releasing the hostages, in terms of transitioning and giving up power in Gaza, in terms of at some point giving up its arms, which is something that the Israelis are want. I mean, the number one thing that always gets overlooked is Israel's need for security, and no one ever discusses it.
And we are also joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser for this discussion. Yossi, I would like to come to you. Thank you for joining us again. And John, thank you for sharing that insight. Yossi, what is your reaction? Do you think that this agreement could hold, particularly with Israeli military retaining control over half of the Gaza during the transition period?
Well, it can hold because it is in the interest of Israel and it is in the interest of the Hamas as well at this point to hold the agreement, because otherwise they are going to be faced with Israeli military moves that may endanger their ability to stay in power. They still believe that they will be able to stay in power if this part of the first phase of the agreement is being implemented. They can still convince the Americans to leave them in power and leave them with some of the weapons. They still believe that this is possible, so they have an interest in implementing this phase.
And Yossi, the decision to exclude Marwan Barghouti, this particular individual from the upcoming prisoner release, it has sparked controversy. So how do you think this will impact Palestinian internal politics, and what do you think what could be the reason behind not releasing him from Israel's point of view?
It was not only that he was directly responsible for killing 5 Israelis, but he was responsible for the entire Second Intifada. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed under his leadership. So for us to release a person like that from jail that can spark another intifada if he just is in place to lead the Palestinians again is too dangerous. And that's why we are not going to release Marwan Barghouti. Because it's, that when he was put in charge to court in charge of these 5 murders, he was also responsible for the murders of so many others that the court decided, because it was not a direct responsibility, not to deal with these matters, with these cases. But we know that he was responsible for the killing of so many Israelis. We cannot afford allowing him to resume its activities.
And so, who is he? Is he a was he a Hamas leader? Was he another faction's leader? Who is he?
No, he was the leader of the Fatah group under Yasser Arafat at the time. And when Arafat wanted to lead the second Intifada with all the suicide bombings and so on and so forth, he used the Baruti in order to tell the people of Fatah and of the other groups to carry out terror attacks. And he was the person that symbolized the second Intifada in the mind of every Palestinian. And that's why I think he's responsible directly for everything that happened at the time. And by the way, later on, he became very close to Hamas, even though he still belongs to the Fatah. He's very close to Hamas, and he cooperated with them on all kinds of calls for more violence and for unity within the Palestinian political scene.
And is he? What's his relationship like with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas?
On the surface, they are in very good relationships. Abbas calls for his release all the time and wait for him to be released and so on and so forth because he's very popular. But behind the scene, there are tensions because Abbas considers him to be somebody who may replace him. So he doesn't want him to endanger him. And this is the very complicated relationships they have.
And how long do you think, Yossi, will this transition period? It's very open, and like our other guest John just mentioned, everything here in this plan is very open. And how long do you think this transition period will last?
This is one of the open questions about the plan. How long? There are no timetables. We move from one stage to another according to performance-based criteria and not according to timetables. So it's difficult to say how long can you discuss with the Hamas the issue of disarming. But at one point, I guess the Americans are going to put some timetables on that and tell the Hamas that they have, I don't know, 2 weeks to decide what they want, and if they do not decide, then there's going to be consequences to that. And this is not something to speak about at this point, because nobody wants to make Hamas think again about the implementation of the first phase. Let's first move through the first phase of the releasing the hostages, and then we'll start dealing with the disarmament of Hamas, with the putting in place of another regime in Gaza led by technocrats, with bringing in the Gaza interim control team, and with the build-up of the international stabilization force. We have a lot of stages and a lot of things to do following the release of the hostages. And right now, we shouldn't speak about these issues too much because we want to focus on the releasing of the hostages, make sure that it is performed according to what was agreed upon.
And Yossi, now the ceasefire agreement was brokered in Egypt, and there were other countries that were there, like such as Turkey, Egypt, Qatar. What do you think? What was the other countries' role in this peace process?
Well, they had a very important role because Israel has put the pressure on Hamas by the military operation we carried out in the Gaza City. And the role of Qatar and Turkey was to take this leverage that Israel has built and to explain to Hamas that if they are not going to move forward with the hostages release, then Israel will keep moving and destroy them and remove them from power by force. And when they hear that from their friends, the Turks and the Qataris, they are much more ready to listen than they are when we tell them that directly, or when the Americans are telling them that, or when the Egyptians tell them that. They have to hear it from Qatar and Turkey. I guess Qatar and Turkey also added all kinds of threats of their own, because the leadership of Hamas lives in both Qatar and Turkey. So this was they have the ability to expel them, which may cause a lot of damage and problems for Hamas. So maybe they used also this leverage in order to convince Hamas to accept the deal. And eventually we have a good deal because it's good for everybody, by the way. It's good for Israel, of course, because the hostages are going to be released finally, all of them. But it's good also for Hamas because they are saved from being exterminated by the Israeli military. And they get the terrorists that they wanted to release from jail, unfortunately. But 1,900 terrorists are going to be released from jail, including some arch-terrorists.
With that, I would like to thank John Rosamondo and Yossi Cooper-Wasser for sharing that insight. We have a breaking news. According to Israeli President's Office, U.S. President Donald Trump to be in Jerusalem on 12th October. In just 3 days, this comes after the news of Hamas-Israel ceasefire being agreed has come in. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Yossi, given the U.S.'s, we were just talking about the foreign interference or foreign roles in this mediating this conflict. What do you think? How significant was U.S.'s role, particularly President Trump's role?
Well, of course, President Trump played a huge role in making this happen. First of all, he just put his weight on making this happen. It's after all, this is the most important person in the world, and when he's directly and personally involved in the way that he was, everybody has to listen and take into consideration whatever the president says. You cannot ignore him, and you cannot say to him something and then do not deliver, because this was very important, because Qatar and Turkey promised to bring Hamas, and when they realized that there are problems with that, they felt very bad about the possibility that they would appear as giving promises to President Trump and not being able to deliver. That's what made them more keen on making sure that Hamas delivers. And and on top of that, he orchestrated all of this campaign that brought about the signing of the agreement. He brought the Muslim and Arab countries to the table. He brought Netanyahu to the table. He brought the Egyptians to the table as well. This was a very complicated act, and President Trump did it brilliantly. I think he really deserves all the credit for making it happen. Everybody else contributed as much as they could, but the person who orchestrated all of that was President Trump, and he should be praised for that.
Yes, thank you very much, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for sharing that insight and staying with us throughout this topic. Now we move on. Russian President Vladimir Putin has for the first time admitted that Russia has played a role in the 2024 crash of an Azerbaijani passenger plane, describing the incident as a tragedy. In a meeting with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, Putin has explained that Russian missiles were deployed to destroy Ukrainian drones on the night of that crash, and that they exploded just meters away from the aircraft. He has assured that Russia will take all necessary measures to provide compensation, and that the actions of all officials involved will be legally assessed. Let's listen into what Russian president has said.
Является чувствительной темой из-за организованной трагедии, нашей мире. И вот уже как целый первый раз из Бенина, там что трагедия подошла именно от людей из России, через органы, это самое искренне соболезнования семьи, конечно. Я хотел бы вот это все повторить, заговорить, мне сказать, что слово переговорились. Russian
President Vladimir Putin has for the first time admitted that Russia did play a role in the 2024 crash of an Azerbaijani passenger plane crash, describing the incident as a tragedy. In a meeting with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, Putin has explained that Russian missiles were deployed to destroy Ukrainian drones on the night of the crash and that they exploded just meters away from the aircraft. He assured that Russia will take all necessary measures to provide compensation and that the actions of all officials involved will be legally assessed. Let's listen into what Russian president has said.
Значительно требовать является чувствительной темы из-за образованных таких наших видов. И вот уже так целый чемпионат выморозили видов из Бенина, там что трагедия подошла именно от людей с России, число это самое, если не заболезности, конечно. Я хотел бы вот это все повторить, остановить. Мне сказать, что слово переговорились на кассовом всяческих содействия следствие закончено.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by John Rossomando. He's the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, John, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, can you take us back to when did this incident occur and what was Azerbaijan's claims on this incident, and how long did it take for Russia to admit this?
Well, the Russians seem to have admitted it immediately, and they have been, it's been a major divide. The Azerbaijanis have been, opposed to Russia over its war with Armenia. The Russians have sided with Armenia. So I think that it's significant.
And how do you think this public acknowledgement will affect Russia's relationship with Azerbaijan and its broader standing in international diplomacy?
Well, I think that the Azerbaijanis and the Russians have had a tense relationship going back to the days of the Soviet Union, and I think that this transparency should help to ease tensions between the two sides, because the Russians are eager to keep their foothold, especially after the defeat of Armenia in the recent war over Nagorno-Karabakh.
Thank you very much, John, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has arrived in Pyongyang on Thursday to attend the 80th anniversary of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party. According to China's CCTV, he was welcomed at the airport by North Korea's Premier Pak Tae-song, and they inspected the Korean People's Army Guards of Honor. He has described China and North Korea as socialist neighbors with a profound traditional friendship. Alongside Li, a Russian delegation led by former President Dmitry Medvedev and Vietnam's Communist Party chief Tu Lam are attending the events. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has praised the Li Party's legacy ahead of Friday's celebrations. Now we move on to India. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has praised the growing technological partnership between the United Kingdom and India, highlighting both countries as leading AI powers. Keir Starmer has stressed that the UK is one of only 3 countries with $1 trillion tech sector, while India is set to become the 4th. He has also laid out the UK's role in supporting India's rise as an economic superpower, forecast to become the 3rd largest economy by 2028. The British Prime Minister referred to the trade deal as a launchpad to advance sectors like tech, life sciences, and renewable energy. He then has celebrated the deal's impact, which will bring $1.6 billion in new investments and create over 10,000 jobs across the British country. Let's listen into what the British Prime Minister has said.
I've come here this week leading our biggest trade delegation to India ever to follow through on this deal. That means 126 CEOs, tech entrepreneurs, SMEs, vice chancellors, sports and cultural leaders, all here with me to seize the incredible benefits that this deal offers to the British people. The opportunity is clear. Just look at the sheer scale of India, the world's largest democracy, on track to become the third largest economy by 2028, an economic superpower in the making. And we, the UK, are perfectly placed.
Now, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has praised the growing technological partnership between the United Kingdom and India, highlighting both countries as leading AI powers. He has stressed that the UK is one of only 3 countries with a $1 trillion tech sector, while India is set to become the 4th. He has also laid out UK's role in supporting India's rise as an economic superpower, forecast to become the 3rd largest economy by 2028. The UK Prime Minister referred to the trade deal as a launchpad to advance sectors like tech, life sciences, and renewable energy. He has celebrated the deal's impact, which will bring $1.6 billion in new investments and create over 10,000 jobs across UK. Now we move on to our next news. In Sudan, at least 13 people were killed after an artillery attack struck a mosque in the besieged city of El Fasher. The strike, carried out by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, took place on the 9th of October. One resident has said that after the shelling, 13 bodies were pulled from under the rubble and laid to rest. Another survivor recounted that around 70 families had been sheltering inside the mosque after the forces entered their homes. The attack has also left at least 20 people wounded and caused heavy damage to the building.